And when I went to do it, I was shocked because I had pre-framed myself this would be easy, right? And I went to somebody, without mentioning names, who's a brilliant philanthropist and a beautiful man who's helped me when I did my billion meals. And he said, well, Tony, how much is that going to cost? I said, well, it cost me about $100 million over 10 years. You know, you're doing 100 million meals a year for 10 years. And this guy's worth about $20 billion. And he said to me, that's beyond my pay grade. And so I had to kind of reevaluate. But because I kept pre-framing myself, this is a must, this is not a should, it's not a reframing job. I just came up with a different plan. I'm really proud to tell you, we did 30 billion meals we just announced in our first 2 years. And we're on track this year to be at 60 billion. And what seemed like an absolutely impossible task is there. There is another skill besides pre-framing and reframing, deframing. Deframing is when you destroy the frame of reference. So in business, you know, one of the things you have to know is like, I believe it's my privilege to serve people, but I also believe it's their privilege to be able to learn. And it's not an ego thing. It's just like, it's a mutual privilege, meaning I got to earn the right to be able to serve you. And you got to be a reasonable person for me to want to serve you too. And I made a change in one of my events, like 20 years ago. And one of the things I did is there was a 14-day program and the world changed. And so we brought it down to 10 days. I think it was 12 days to 14 in those days. And I had some open days with some stretches and things. It was a very intensive program, but I was like, I need to make it tighter so people can commit the time and come. And I figured out how I'm going to add even more value, how I'm going to make this even more useful. So I did. And there's this one woman who went crazy and she started attacking me and called my offices up and said, I want my money back. And I'm going to tell everybody else Tony Robbins is screwing us and everything else. And my team was all freaked out. And I said, no. I said, fire her. I said, what? I said, fire her as a customer. I said, you call her, because it's not her first event. She knows how incredible things are. She wouldn't be coming to this 14-day event, 12-day event. I said, if she's going to say that, first of all, I'm happy to give her money back. We have a money back guarantee on everything. So I give her money back and say, we want to give her money back, but want you to know you can never come to an event again because you're no longer one of our customers because you know better. You know, Tony always adds 10 times the value, right? Long story short, this lady starts fighting to stay on there. My staff couldn't believe it, right? Because he deframed it. You took away the frame of reference. You destroyed it, right? I said, no, you don't understand. She goes, no, I have a right to come. No, you don't. You know, I have to earn your respect. I got to deliver for you. You got to deliver for me too. You're not a customer anymore and you can't come here. The lady, it was in Hawaii. She flew to Hawaii and demanded to see me as the program's going to start. You have to let me in this program, right? I said, if you want to get up and make a public apology for what you've done, I said, that'd be acceptable to me. I said, but you knew better. You just did this to get attention. And I said, so I bought back your seat. And I told you to send us any of your friends that want their seats back because we need the seats. We really did, right? And so that was the end of it. And it gave a lesson to everybody on my team. And I try to teach it to business owners. Like, not everybody's your customer. I'm not the right person for everybody. You're the right person for everybody. We have unique styles or approaches. And so we're not here to try to please everybody. We're here to try and serve the people that are really interested in being served. So pre-frame, reframe, and deframe as frames of references. But I think pre-frame is the most valuable. And if somebody wants to learn to do the priming, you can go to tonyrobbins.com/priming. There's no charge for it. And there's a video I'll guide you through it if you want to try it.
One of my friends used to work in a retail store and he observed one of his bosses do something that was kind of interesting with the deframing thing. So somebody had come up and there'd been some sort of an issue, I think, with the way that one of the members of staff had given them clothes that they were trying on, something had occurred, but the customer was completely at fault. It was all them. And they came over to the supervisor and they said, this is a problem and I need to speak to the manager. And the manager immediately one-upped and said, tell me exactly who did this. I'm going to get them fired on the spot. And this person immediately completely flipped what they were thinking. And he turned to my friend afterward and he said, only one person's allowed to be in the angry boat.
That's great.
I love it.
I love it too. It breaks the pattern.
Exactly.
And that's all it really is, right? Changing the frame is breaking the pattern.
Correct.
But easier to break the pattern before it starts.
Yes.
Much easier. And then, by the way, it becomes, you train your neurons, you're training your nervous system to think that way.
It's the ruthless thing about habits, right? The Matthew principle of to those who have more will be given, to those who have less, more will be taken.
Yes, true.
And you've worked with How many people have you serviced in person now? Do you know?
Well, I think in live events we've had, I think it's 15 million people total, because, I've done these big ones like, where I do 1 million people at a time now. Some of these events, it's insane.
So books, live events, in-person, online, audio courses. What have you come to understand about the things that can be achieved from people in a group context that maybe can't be achieved through self-directed learning?
I think anything can be done by self-directed learning personally. I just think it accelerates when you create an environment where it maximizes. So, low energy, I have a frame, you may disagree with this massively. You get in your head, you're dead. I think when I say you have to have the head and heart connected, right? It's like, why don't people transform? Because they're in their head about it. They're thinking it through. They think that if I understand this, then it'll just happen. It's absurd. If you're good at something, you've trained it into yourself. I'm fortunate enough to own several sports teams or pieces of sports teams, and I have championship drinks, all these sports. I wanted to be an athlete, so I relived it in a different way. But the Golden State Warriors are one of the ones I have a piece of, and I've got a chance to work with them their championship seasons, work with the players, and it's been totally fun. But you look at somebody like Steph Curry, and you see this guy who, shoot the ball from almost half court, trumping on the side of his thing, and he doesn't even look. He turns around and just waves because he knows it's in already, and there's swish, and the crowd goes crazy. And people look at that and go, he's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. He's the greatest three-point shooter in history. There's no one like him. But what they don't pay attention to is that isn't like a little gift, right? He shoots 500 shots every single day, never less than that, 7 days a week, for more than 15 years. His 15-year professional career. He's been doing it since before he was in college. His dad really trained him. So think of that, 3,500 shots a week, 168,000 shots in a year, 2.52 million shots in his 15-year NBA career, so he can make 3,600 shots. Not even 1/10 of 1%. I tell people, you get rewarded in public for what you practice in private. Your training of your nervous system to do things is what really matters most. And you can't just be in your head. So I believe, to answer your question, the reason I still do events is that an event provides, first of all, immersion. You can learn a language a little bit at a time. And, you ask most people, unless they live in a place where they have to use the language and they learned another language in high school and college, they don't speak it anymore. They don't remember 10 words. But if you wanted to learn Italian and you have the time and money, I just drop you in Italy, drop you in Rome, and pick you up 4 months later. There's zero question you're going to be speaking Italian because you're seeing it, feeling it, breathing it, doing it. So that's why I do 12 hours a time, 4 days. And people think it sounds insane, but it's only insane if you're not enjoying it. And people love it, even people that get dragged there, because we engage all their senses, not just their head. And so when all your needs are being met simultaneously, time flies. It's like a minute can feel like an eternity when you don't like what's going on. Hours fly by when you're really having great experience. So I believe the environment where we produce that much energy produces it. Now, when COVID happened, I'll give you a good example. Suddenly, I'm used to doing stadiums all over the world, and the first one I get is a phone call from Gavin Newsom's office in California. I'm about to do a program in San Jose, San Francisco for 14,000 people, and his office calls and says, "We're really sorry, you can put 100 people in the stadium." I'm like, we got 14,000 people. That's not possible. So my whole thing is, okay, screw that. We're going to Vegas. They'll never shut down Vegas. 10 days outside of Vegas, after moving 14,000 people to go there, they shut down Vegas. So I'm like, screw it, we'll go to Texas, their own country. The governor says he won't melt, he's not going to bend, I got a friend in Houston that has a big church there, 14,000 people, perfect. We rent the place. 2 weeks out, they shut down there. I'll do it in movie theaters, 1,400 movie theaters. We'll do this where, we'll put 10 people in every movie theater. That was what they limited us to. But they'll have a big screen, they'll have great sound, and they'll have some interaction. We're going to make this work. They shut down the movie theaters. So I built the studio, and I did something I wouldn't have done anything without necessity, which was like, I need to reach people where they are right now, because I don't know how long they're going to be stuck at home. This goes way beyond business. I got plenty of companies, plenty of money, but it's like, how do I serve in this time? And so it's like, okay, I'm gonna do a seminar where there's no money involved. Because what's in the way? Money, travel, because most of the people just fly to another country to see me, that kind of thing. And even time. I want to give them immersion, but not enough that it's overwhelming to them. And so I set up this program. We're going to do 3 days, 3.5 hours, 3 hours each day, kind of like going to a movie, but one that changes your life. And let's invite people from all over the world. And the first one we had 383,000 people for, instead of 15 or 20,000 people for a seminar. And then the second one was 600. And then so last year was almost 1.5 million people. And I'm doing one again this year. And I'm super excited about it. It's one of the reasons I want to do your podcast. I want to get the word out because I know a lot of young men in your audience that are looking to create a meaningful life, take things to another level. And they may not know if this is worthwhile or not, but they can come and they can do it from wherever they are. They can do it from their office or home. They can do it with a friend. There's no charge for it. It's not partially free, it's totally free. But the stories and the examples that come out of it when people get an environment like that, I give you an example of just a fun one because I saw him the other day. So a gentleman named Matt, who never would have made it to one of my seminars. Why? He's in bed. He weighs over 700 pounds. He's on oxygen. He can't leave the bed to even go to the bathroom. He does it through tubes, right? Doctor says he'll never be off oxygen as long as he lives. But we're using Zoom, and so I'm interacting with people live all over the earth. And the one thing I ask for is I don't ask for money, but I ask you to do an assignment each night and put it on Facebook. And then I'm up all night watching all these because it's so compelling to see how people's lives are changing. So I saw this guy, so I brought him on the next day. He's in the bed. He's watching on the screen because it's free and he doesn't have to go anywhere. He can do it. Might as well make use of it. He got so inspired. He says, I want to get out of this bed. Doctor says, I can't do this. I said, well, let's chunk it. What are the first steps? First, we got to get some upper body strength. And I said, what do you got nearby? And he had like this thing you hang coats on. So I said, we're going to start with that, right? So he's in bed doing this little thing. And I said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I said, you're going to sit down, you're looking for the timeline. But I said, if you can get this done in the next 4 months, where you can get out of bed, go to the bathroom, make it into a car, I said, I'll fly you to my event. We'll walk on fire together. We'll have this experience. He's lost now over 300 pounds. 325 was the latest number. He's inspired everybody in the community that's there. He drives a car now. He fell in love with a lady, and so I sent him my resort in Fiji so he could go celebrate and everything else. He's got a completely different life. He would have never done that in a million years. So it's my way of saying, yes, I can bring the event to you, which I didn't believe before. I didn't believe I could do that. But now we'll start at 10 a.m., let's say, in Florida here to do, let's say, a 4-day seminar that I'm going to do. And we have people from 193 countries participating, and we got 30,000 people instead of 10 or 15 or 20,000. And it's already midnight in Sydney, Australia, and I go 13 hours. So they're going to be up from midnight to 1 in the afternoon for 4 days, and we lose 3% of the people. So I found that environment can work as well because we've learned how to, when people go to a ball game and they get shown on the screen, we know how to keep everybody so engaged. But I also get to see them, Chris, in their home, how they live. I get to see them with their dog and with their kid. I watch the sun rise and set while I'm still speaking and what their level of focus is and where they go. And I can call them and say, John, what are you doing right there? I don't know the person's name in a live seminar, right? The guy jumps up, and I have these giant screens. I built this 50-foot high building with 20-foot high LED screens, 0.67, highest resolution in the world. I can see every pimple, every move, everything on you. So that environment is more powerful to me than just self-directed. But some people are self-directed. They say, screw you, I don't need that shit, and I do it on my own. I believe that too. So a book or a tape or something is there. But I find it accelerates the experience massively because it's like going to, a game and there's 1,000 people in the audience, or there's, 50,000. Emotions are contagious. Somebody yawns, oh, don't do that. You start to yawn, right? Or somebody laughs and you start to laugh. So I love using that dynamic as an accelerator.
Before we get back to Tony, let me guess. You wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, then you walk out of the door. Congratulations, you've achieved normal. But what about being normal plus hydrated, which is where Element comes in? Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium with no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, or any other BS. It plays a critical role in reducing muscle cramps and fatigue. Are you going to throw more at me? Whilst optimizing brain health, regulating appetite, and curbing cravings. This is why I've used it every single morning for over 3 years. It's why Elements are used by everybody from Dr. Andrew Huberman to Dr. Mike Israetel. And this orange flavor in a cold glass of water is a beautiful, sweet, salty, orangey nectar that I've started my day with for as long as I can remember. And I'm going to keep talking about it because I genuinely feel the difference when I'm hydrated versus when I'm not. And you should too. And they've got a money back guarantee where you don't even need to return the box. So it's completely risk-free. So you can buy it. And if you don't like it for any reason, you just get your money back. And you get a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinklmnt.com/modern wisdom. That's drinklmnt.com/modern wisdom. What does your pre-event ritual look like? You talk a lot about energy levels,
Yes.
and I'm fascinated by how you get yourself into the space where you can deliver. I'm aware that you need to do the conditioning. You actually need to have the sort of base level of fitness and stuff like that.
At least, yes.
But the priming period in the build up to going to do one of these things, can you take me through what that looks like?
Well, a couple days in advance, I'm about to do a 6-day program right now for business owners from all over the world. I start to jot down my notes of what are some of the things I'm most passionate about, beliefs I have right now that are currently alive in me. I have 114 companies now. It's pretty wild. We do $9 billion in business. I have no business background. I learned from brilliant people, and I learned the patterns, that make things work. So I think what are the most important ones I'm learning, experiencing now that I want to bring? I review what I know fundamentally people need to know in those areas. Then I start reading different articles and start loading myself up with some other entrepreneurs' recent thoughts. And then I'm doing all my physical training, of course, which is very, very intense, right? So that I'm ready to go 12 hours a day, 13 hours a day on stage. And then the morning of, I do my priming. And then I have...
That's the same process that we spoke about before, just 10 minutes with a little bit of cold plunge, ice bath, stuff after.
Yeah, all that. And then what I do is I get up, I have a little mind map of what, I have my outcomes. I'm not driven like a script. I have certain fundamentals that you learn to speak, and you speak them well, and you know the impact it's going to have. But they're all like deposits in the bank of your life, so that when something comes up, you can pull from those. But then there's all the things that happen spontaneously that make it fun. So I'll lay out what I think the sequence of what I'm going to do is, and then you get in the room and you feel people, and that all changes. But my last thing that I do is, quite honestly, just a prayer. It's like, use me, Lord. I make this physical ritual of I shift my body pretty radically, and I go into this state, use me, and then I get up on stage, and then I have this plan, and the plan goes out the window. I often work till 2 a.m. with my team laying out what we're going to do, and they all know it's just entertainment. But I'll use a lot of it, but maybe not in that syntax, because I feel it. And also that makes it art. I'd be bored out of my mind. It was exactly the same every single time.
It's this balance between control and being in the moment. You were saying before about one of the things that people want is this sense of control. And
Yes.
if I can plan very effectively in advance, if I know all of the different ways that this could go, the different permutations, and if this happens, then I'm going to do that. And if that happens, then I'm going to do this.
And it never really happens that way.
It doesn't at all. And I think that's
But it awakens your nervous system, I think, to prepare. Like I could get up there at this point with my pinky and not prepare at all. But when people ask my wife, what's something about Tony that nobody understands? And it's like that nobody understands how intensely he prepares, because I absorb. And like I read people's forms, 1,000 of them. I'm crazy, because I know I'm not going to remember their name and everything else, but I'll remember the pattern. And when the pattern shows up with somebody, I'll know that pattern's an important pattern for multiple people in the room, and I'll address it in a different way each time. But it makes it art when it's different. But my wife is a different approach. I admire her approach. I trust in God after I've done all the work. She just trusts in God and gets up and does it. I feel if I work my ass off, now I've done my part. Okay, now come through me. Let's do this. And it tends to float.
I love that reframe. I've never heard anybody use it before. I've heard someone say, life happens to me or I happen to life, but life happens for me.
Yes,
Is
not to me.
Yeah, is a wonderful reframe.
Yeah, I really believe it. But you got to dig for it. It's not easy.
It's got to be earned, right? Like wishing for confidence without competence is just delusion. You have no evidence to say that you can do this thing. And I don't know, maybe your wife's sufficiently naturally talented, / she's channeling something else. I'm not
Some
sure.
combination of the two.
You mentioned before about some of the challenges from childhood. It seems to me like you have a lot of forgiving to do or overcoming to do from childhood, difficult things, situations that you've been through. how can people learn to better let go of their past in that way? I'm aware we've talked about the chip on the shoulder. It can be a good fuel, but it's kind of toxic when used for a longer term. A lot of people spend their time in the past ruminating.
Yeah.
What is a better way to let go of the things that you think were unfair? Maybe you don't get to have closure about them. Maybe you don't get to have that final conversation with that bully from school or your parent or carer or whatever that didn't treat you in the way that you wanted. How would you say people should let go of their past more effectively?
If you want freedom, if you value freedom, you can't possibly have it as long as you played the victim role. And even if you were physically victimized, and my mom, I don't look at it that way. She was physically intense, and you could call it abusive. I prefer not to use that language because that also puts in that place. I never even told anybody about that experience until maybe 15 years ago. I was now in New York, and I was with this group of young African-American and some Hispanic kids, all had single mothers, all from really troubled backgrounds. And I started talking to them about various things. And I'm trying to get across that biography is not destiny. And I was giving them different examples of people. But I could just see him, I could just mind read, look at this big, tall, white guy, and he's wealthy and easy for him, right? So I told them everything, things I never told anybody. And every single one of them was crying their eyes out. I was crying too. But then I got them to see that, like, none of that makes you who you are. None of that controls where you are in your life. I was like, if my mom had been the mother I'd hoped she'd be, I would not be the man I'm proud to be. So, and she did many beautiful things. But, if I was a well-fed kid, would I be providing 30 billion meals for people? Would I work this hard to feed people that I'll never meet and never know and will never say thank you to me? I'm not looking for it. No. I mean, I'd love to believe I do. I'm a good person. You're a good person. But I wouldn't have had that hunger without that. So that's where that belief comes from. That's like, life has been happening for me. I don't know if you can relate to this. My bet is you could. Maybe your viewers or listeners can. It's like, have you ever had something happen in your life that was horrible? I mean, it was painful. You'd never want to go through it again in a million years. You wouldn't want anybody else to go through it that you care about. But after 5 or 10 years, you look back and you say, I never want to go through it again. But now I see the wisdom in it.
I'm glad
it's like it made me care so much more. It made me so much stronger. It made something in me more. I mean, I'm sure you can relate to that, can't you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the world in which something happens to you when you're younger. So for me, school wasn't that fun, quite heavily bullied, quite alone, quite isolated. And at the time, you kind of just get through it. You don't really realize it's just life, right? That's just childhood to you. The what is water to the fish question. And then you grow up a little bit, you kind of realize, that probably wasn't so good. That probably wasn't so healthy. And then you learn a little bit more about yourself and you start to realize, well, look at all of the ways that I've had to compensate for that. Look at all of the ways that it's held me back. Look at all of the beliefs that I have about myself. And God, if only that hadn't happened, then I would be here or I would be there. And then you realize, well, the light side of all of that dark stuff is usually the stuff that I'm most proud of myself for.
Yes.
So the fact that you were maybe a little bit alone in childhood means that you're very self-sufficient when you're an adult, or the fact that you didn't have anybody to support you means that you have no concern about working on your own and continuing to take a bet on yourself, so on and so forth. So you end up having this really strange loop where you go from unconscious incompetence in that you've somehow been through something that you really hate, to this sort of awareness of how it's held you back, to this awareness of how it's propelled you. And then you have to get to this really difficult place, which is, okay, so this is a thing that I kind of wish hadn't happened, and yet I'm grateful that it did. And it's like a, the idea of quantum superpositions. It's like a psychological superposition that you need to hold in your head at the same time. You can't collapse it down into one. You need to hold both of these things. It's like, yeah, that's fucked. Like, that shouldn't have happened. I really wish that, and had you have been able to see you, had you at 36 have been able to see you at 12, you'd have picked them up and given them a hug and said, I believe in you and you don't deserve this. But it needs to happen to you if you're going to become the sort of person.
And I don't hold them separate.
Yep.
I put them together. And when you put them together, all you have left is the truth. And the truth is it had a higher purpose. It was meant to be. Now, I don't believe like everything's meant to be. I think situations are meant to be, and then it's our job to choose how we're going to use them or be used by them, right? I think that's the difference. But I think there's nothing to forgive. I know there's nothing, like people say this, but you have so much to forgive. F that and forgive. There's nothing to forgive. I mean, it's like if I get to a deeper truth, a deeper spiritual truth, a soulful truth, it's all like soul contracts. Like, so we're all here for something more than ourselves. And it's not until you realize that you stop the childhood thing of, I need to forgive people, or I need to, maybe you want to think about what you want other people you want them to forgive you for, or you can make an apology, because we all screw up. We all do stupid things. We all do things we're not proud of at different times. The secret is, do you do something about it, or do you just ruminate or beat yourself up or pretend it isn't there?
Well, that balance is really, really difficult. Between turning pain into motivation and recognizing that it's there. So you're not denying that it's there, but you're also not wallowing in it, but you're also not just using it as the only pain, but you're also realizing that you've had to alchemize it, transcend and include it in Wilberian language. It's a delicate balance. And I think that there's a few things in life, and the older I've got, 36, the more I've kind of realized that a lot of realizations just come along for the ride as a byproduct of getting older. And we can do a lot of the things. We can read the books, we can go to the seminars, we can attend the online events, and we can expedite some of these realizations. But there's some insights that are just hard won by time.
Some that's true with. I think you're right about that. But I also think it can be accelerated by who you spend time with. I've had the great privilege of having some great mentors. They're all 18 to 20 years my seniors. So, some I knew when I was, 20 and they were 40, and now they're 80 and then, 82, 83, 84, and I'm going to be 65.
You're just holding onto the coattails in their way.
Because they've given me a look at the pathway of life. We're not all the same by any stretch, but there's certain fundamental things you go through. I remember some of them would tell me things, like when you're 40, you're going to think this or feel this. I was like, read between the lines.
Shut up.
You're full of it. You know what you're talking about. But there were certain things that it turned out to be really true. So some of those you experience, but then once you've experienced enough of them, you don't have to wait to experience everything. You can start to project, wait a second here. There's some real deeper truth here.
Yeah.
And one of those, I think, is it's not hard. I'd invite you to consider, you don't have to hold both. The holding both is like the piece of being afraid that if I really enjoy myself, I won't have the same level of drive. Once you're a fucking achiever, the drive is never going to leave you. It's just a matter of now you can do it more elegantly if you choose to.
Agreed. Yeah, there's a cumbersomeness to doing it when you grip very tightly. Yeah. And this ease and grace thing, finding more joy, finding more fun, learning to let go, that's something that I'm really, really obsessed by at the moment. If your energy levels are a little low, or if you're not performing in the gym or the bedroom the way that you would like, your testosterone levels might be at fault. And one of the best ways to naturally increase your testosterone is with Tonkat Ali. And I first heard Dr. Andrew Huberman talk about the really impressive effects that tons of research was showing, until you realize that most supplements don't actually contain what they're advertising. Momentous makes the only NSF certified Tonkat Ali on the planet. And that means that it's so rigorously tested that even Olympic athletes can use it. And that is why I partnered with them, because they make the most carefully tested, highest quality supplements on Earth. This is a huge part of my brain, body, and sleep stack, which makes a big impact on my cognition and my strength and my recovery. And if you're still unsure, Momentous has got a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you can buy it and try it for 29 days. If you don't love it, they'll just give you your money back, and they ship internationally. Right now, you can get 20% off all of their products plus that 30-day money-back guarantee by going to the link in the description below, or heading to livemomentous.com/modernwisdom and using the code modernwisdom at checkout. That's livemomentous.com/modernwisdom and Modern Wisdom at checkout. I'm interested, you mentioned there about your the amount of work that you put in, reading these forms, the preparation that you do for all of these different events, and even with the alchemy that you've done, letting go of things from your past and the way that you've turned it into a version of you that you're incredibly proud of. I'm interested in how much peace you have in life, whether you would say that how often you're able to access peace with all of the things going on.
It was the most peaceful, most happy stage of my life by far. I look at things in terms of seasons. I remember in early 90s, I don't know if you've read The Fourth Turning. Did you read that book by chance?
No.
Oh my gosh, please read it. I think you'll find it really valuable. I was coaching President Clinton. And in those days, I also coached Gingrich. I was on both sides of the aisle because I'm an independent, right? So I want to help both sides. So I left literally the president, and he had this book, and I was reading it was a big thick book. It's what's the other one they have? It's basically 500 years of American history, Anglo-American history. And And it was written by the same guys who wrote The Fourth Turning. And I asked him about it, and he told me a little bit about the patterns of generations and how they work. I was fascinated how it shapes history. I go to Gingrich, who's a historian, and the same book is there. And so I grabbed the book, and then The Fourth Turning came out a little bit after that. It was one of those throwaway books, at a discount. And I love those books, because they're contrarian. And I picked it up. It wasn't popular, and I read it. And it's a book that basically describes that history has patterns and seasons to it, just like everything has seasons. So I look at it this way. Maybe a simple way to explain it is, I have 5 kids and 5 grandkids. I have a 50-year-old daughter, and I have about to be 4-year-old daughter in a couple months. So I have quite an extreme group. And I think about my youngest daughter or my grandkids, and even for my kids, but most of them are adults now. And I think like the world is changing so much, nanotechnology, obviously algorithms, AI, all the things that are coming, robotics. The change, we're at the base of unbelievable transformation. We're going to see more change in the next 5 to 10 years than in the history of humanity. And that's not an exaggeration. Well, there's going to be a huge number of jobs that are disrupted from that. And listen, 200 years ago, 85% of America was a farmer. Now it's 4% and we feed the whole world because of technology. But that happened over a long period of time. We're going to see changes like self-driving cars. There's several cities where they're operating right now, right? Ubers and so forth. How long is it going to take before every truck and every taxi will be there? Well, that means every Uber driver, every taxi driver, who's going to hire a truck driver who can work 8 hours a day? You got to pay for the health care, and they complain
and crash sometimes.
And crash, where you're going to have a 24-hour day, that better insurance, and you get to depreciate the asset. I mean, these jobs are going away. That's 8 million jobs in America. That's as many jobs as we lost in 2008 when the crash was happening. So, and no one's preparing for it. So I remember talking to Obama about it. It's like, this is coming, He goes, well, Tony, I said, is anybody got a plan? Are we going to educate these people? This is going to be social disruption, right? He says, well, we've talked about, the payments, what's it called? UBI. And I said, yeah, but the UBI, it'll never be enough money because once they adjust to it, it'll be more. And UBI doesn't give anybody meaning.
There's a fascinating couple of studies that you probably caught that came out in the last 6 months about that. It's really not good.
No, I know it's not good.
The outcomes are really, really,
well, you
really
could predict that. Well, you don't have to be brilliant scientists to figure that, right? It's
a decade ago, a bit of human intuition would have taught you that.
Yeah. But the point is, they said, what's being done? He goes, well, we think it's going to take a lot longer. It'll be fine. I mean, it's not. So how do you arm yourself or your kids for a world of such change? You have to learn rapidly. And so you need 3 skills. You need skill number 1, to be able to really recognize patterns. You're very good at that. I'm not throwing stuff your way. I watched a couple things you're doing, and you do your homework, and you recognize patterns, you utilize them, you recognize them in yourself, which is one of the things I respect even more, and you use that to improve yourself, right? But when people are fearful, when they have anxiety, it's almost always because they don't recognize the patterns that are happening. Because if you recognize the patterns, things are very predictable. What looks like chaos is just because it's not been a pattern you've seen before. Like if you look at history as an example, it's like, this has never happened. You hear people talk about, we've never been this divided as a country and all this stuff. It's such bullshit. And
there was a civil war.
What's that?
There was a civil war.
Yeah, there was a civil war, but there's a little sheet I brought down. Do you have that little sheet? Can I borrow this? I'll just read you this because I thought it's entertaining. I showed this in an event the other day. This is 2 placards from a photograph of them or reconstruction of them from John Adams versus Thomas Jefferson. They're running for president, right? So let's see how divided they were. This placard says, if you elect Thomas Jefferson, murder, robbery, rape, incest, and adultery will be practiced throughout the land. Are you prepared to see your dwellings in flames, your female chastity violated, or your children writhing on the pike? This is what Adams wrote about Jefferson. It makes like Trump's Hitler sound pretty kind. Almost. Jefferson says about John Adams in the placard, it says, John Adams is busy importing mistresses from Europe or trying to marry one of his sons to the daughter of King George. He's a hideous hermaphrodite character with neither the force or firmness of a man nor the gentleness and sensibility of a woman. These are our founding fathers, right? So it's like, you're so full of shit. Like when you say this has never happened before, it hasn't happened in your lifetime, because the cycle, if you study 1,000 years of Roman history, which I've done, 500 years of Anglo-American history, there's patterns that happen about every roughly 20 years. And the patterns are predictable. So think about this. This is why you want to learn this. If you can recognize patterns, the fear disappears. Second skill, use the pattern. When you know what the pattern is and you use it, now you have mastery of something. Now you can do better than most people in that area. So, I interview all these people, the best investors in the world. They're all different, but I recognize the patterns that are in common. And when I'm done, my billionaire clients love it, and the average person can learn from it because the patterns are fundamental, right? If I want to learn the piano in the beginning, I have to learn probably somebody else's patterns that have figured it out. That's how I learn. But if I use those patterns over and over again, I'll eventually get to I can do the third skill, which is pattern creation. Now you have an amazing life. Now you're not managing your circumstances, you're the creator of your life. But you have to first recognize them so you're not in fear. And then here's an example. When did humanity transform from a fearful place as its primary base, where we were hunter-gatherers, right? Where literally you had to move from place to place and you didn't know if you're going to eat or survive. What changed that to be able to live in a community and grow a community, a city, a state, a country? One, pattern recognition, seasons. The day that we figured out that if I do the right thing at the wrong time, I get nothing. But if I plant it this specific time in the spring, and if I know I got to protect it during the hot summer, I'm going to reap in the fall. And if I hang on to some of that, I'll make it through the next winter. That changed humanity completely. One recognition. And most of us don't have that recognition of the season. So here's a season for you and your audience to consider. What season are you in right now? Because human life has 4 seasons, if we want to call it that, as an oversimplification. 0 to 21 is springtime. What do you know about springtime? Is it hard to grow during springtime? Things grow automatically in springtime. If you start a business in springtime, you're going to think you're the business genius. No, you're just in springtime. Everybody's optimistic. Things grow easily. Goes. It's an overall theme. It lasts about 17 to 20 years on average. And then we exhaust that emotion. It's like even good emotions get exhausted. Do you ever smile so much your face hurt? Right? So it's like you need variety. So then we go into a different season. We go into the summer, which tests you. It's hard. It's more difficult. And then if you make it through that time, you get to reap. And if you make it through that time, you get to be tested again. So it's always, we get easy times and tough times. Why is that important? Well, 0 to 21 is your springtime. Some of us had to go work at 7 or 8 years old, but we're still protected. If there's a war, you didn't go to war, right? Someone fed you most of the time. You're primarily being poured into education, information. So it's a pretty easy time. Then you go 21, 22 to 42. That's your summer. That's your testing period. And I think that's the period that you're coming to the end of. And that testing period, by the way, all the studies show it's the most unhappy time in most people's lives, because you start out feeling you're invincible. Right? You learned all this stuff and you're like, I don't know if I believe all this crap I was taught. I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to be president of the United States, a multi-billionaire, and have 100 relationships simultaneously, and everyone's going to be happy. And you believe this shit, right? Then by the time you're 35, you're like, oh shit, man, one relationship I have a hard time with. And oh my God, I got divorced, or oh my God, I'm not president. So you're not so invincible. It humbles you. But it also makes you grow, because that stage of summer, you're basically the soldier of society. In fact, if we go to war, that's who goes to war. 22 to 42, a little bit younger, you get the frame. And then if you're in business, you're the soldier. But if you're growing in those first 2 seasons, then you're going to enter your power phase. And your power phase is basically 43 to 63. And again, some people get there at 36. Some people get there at some other time, but you get the range. And in that range, it's like, you can do more with your pinky and get it done than, I'm sure you've experienced this in your life, mine too, than when I work 22 hours a day. Now I still work 22 hours a day, but now I run 114 companies, not 2, and I can do 9 billion, not 100 million, it's a different game. And so, it's very rewarding. And it's when you really enter your power as a person, if you worked hard in the spring and the summer, then you reap in the fall. If you didn't, you weep in the fall, right? then eventually, I can tell you this because I'm there now, and I never would have believed it. So I want to plant the seed, the possibility in my friends, I'm going to say out there, who are also young men. I think that's mostly your audience, what I can see, who are driven and hungry and want to be their best selves and don't want to settle. That stage is the wintertime is basically, say, 63, 64 to 84 to 104 to 120 if you have that privilege of living that long, the oldest living humans. And it's a stage where it is incredibly peaceful if you've done the job in the beginning because you know who you are. You're no longer trying to prove it to yourself. You're no longer hanging on to the duality you described earlier. And you don't give a shit. It's like Aristotle said, how do you not be criticized? Say nothing, do nothing, be nothing, right? And you're like, F that, right? I know who the hell I am. And it's like, I'd love to serve everybody. It's not going to be right for everybody. I'm totally fine. But you're not trying to prove it. All you really want to do is serve. So I used to have these giant mission statements, change the world, all these things. And I do all those things. But now it's like my mission statement is, how can I help? And I get calls every day of my life. Somebody's got cancer or tumors or whatever, because, I've got so much expertise in the area because I've interviewed the best on earth, 150 of them, or someone comes to me with a business thing, or it's something in a relationship, or it's an athlete. And so along with what I do formally, and when I go doing my businesses, I have all this that's happening. And then I have my family and you have friendships that are 40 years old, 45 years old, people you've done business with for 30 years, if you've done it right. And you love them and they love you. So when you love at that stage, you love who you're with, you love what you get to do. You start to actually love yourself a little bit. And when I say love yourself, meaning like you're kinder to yourself because just like you're not in that game of still trying to prove it. So if I could magically take that stage and bring it to someone in their 20s, I would do so. So what I try to do instead is paint them a picture of what the path might look like, and that they, being an overachiever, could anticipate the next path and maybe perhaps spend less time in the struggling phase if they know what's coming, anticipation, as opposed to reaction in that area.
Tony, you're awesome. I appreciate you, man. Where should people go? They want to keep up to date with the events that you've got coming up and everything else.
Well, there's an event coming up that I do once a year. I told you about when COVID happened and I created this new way of doing what we do. We still do live events, obviously, but once a year I now do that for free. I do it for 3 days. So I'm doing my next one January 30th, 31st, and February 1st. It's about 3 hours a day. So like I said, think of it like going to a movie for, once a day for 3 days, but it's your life. And instead of making New Year's resolutions that no one follows through on, it's really about creating a path and a plan and some of that transformation we're talking about. And it's really powerful. So there's no charge. It's not partially free. It's free. So you can go to timetorisesummit.com, timetorisesummit.com, get yourself enrolled. If you do it at the office, you can do it with some friends or at home. And I'd love to be able to serve them and see it happens. And if they want to know about other seminars and things, we're on social media under Tony Robbins or TonyRobbins.com.
Heck yeah. Tony, you're great. Thank you so much for today, mate. Let's do this again soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
What's happening, people? Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that conversation with Tony, you'll love my chat with the one and only Matthew McConaughey, which is available just here. Hurry up. Come on.